So before we get started, just to take a moment to tell you who I am and why I am teaching your class today, I'm going to tell you a little story. So I have been a passionate cook since I was a kid. When I was about 10 years old, my mom invited me to cook dinner for the family, and I said yes. So she gave me a stack of cookbooks. I went through and chose all my favorite recipes or photos of the recipes, and she brought me to the grocery store, gave me her credit card, and said, okay, go have fun. And I didn't know what to do or where to go, but eventually I found all the right ingredients and my style, top quality, most expensive ingredients. And so as you can imagine, I was in big trouble because I spent way too much money, but we swiped that card anyway, hurried home, and I began to cook. And I cooked all the way up until about 10 p.m. that night, which, as you can imagine, was chaos in the kitchen. But eventually we sat down, took a deep breath, clunked glasses, and began to eat. And at that moment, everyone was calm, and they seemed to like the food I had made, and I was just thrilled. So from then on, I was begging to be in the kitchen, and quickly my mom said, Anja, why don't you call our local caterer? Why don't you see if you can go help her for a change and get out of my kitchen? So I did, and I ended up working with that wonderful woman all the way through middle school and high school. She had a fantastic catering company in Tahoe City, which is where I'm from, and I loved every moment. So from there, I was deciding where to go to college, and the options were either culinary school, of course, or the other option, as my parents called it, the 4-year well-rounded education. So I ended up going that route to keep my options open, as I'm sure some of you understand. So as I was at Cal, I created my own major, the political economy of food. It was a fascinating major. It led me to study abroad in Lyon, France, which is known to be the gastronomic capital of the world, all right? And while I was in Lyon, I ended up working at quite a few restaurants, all right? I tried to dabble however I could in food, wherever would take me in so that I could learn and learn and learn. And then from there, I traveled to nearby countries, and I worked in restaurants in a few nearby countries as well. So tons of fun. I learned a ton. And then I came back here to finish my degree. Worked at Chez Panisse my senior year, if any of you know what that is. And then okay, I'm seeing a couple nods. And then graduated and started a catering company like Monica. And had a blast with that catering company that was running for about 8 years until the pandemic hit. A few fun things to note. I did get a call in 2016 from the Cleveland Cavaliers when they were in town for the finals. So I did end up cooking them to victory. Sorry, not sorry. And I was in their locker room for the champagne showers and holding their trophy, which was tons of fun. And then I got to know the Golden State Warriors while being at the Oracle Arena, and they ended up inviting me into their locker room. So I did cook for the Golden State Warriors for about 3 years. If you're curious about the players, I have a lot of stories, so feel free to ask me as we're cooking. I'm happy to share some stories. And then from there, I ended up getting a call from the Food Network to be on Cutthroat Kitchen with Alton Brown. So if you like to watch that and you want to see me get massacred, it's season 15, episode 10. That's right, I got sabotaged. It was hilarious, laughed my whole way through, and that made me realize how much I just love trying something new in the kitchen, which led me to teaching cooking classes, and of course with COVID, virtual cooking classes. And then I will tell you now that I redeemed myself on the Food Network in Supermarket Stakeout in a more recent episode. It was last August. So if you want to check that out, that is season 4, episode 13, Supermarket Stakeout with Alex Guarnaschelli. So check it out. But let's see. Besides that, I'm now teaching lots of virtual classes. I love what I do. That's why I'm here. I'm totally passionate, and I love sharing experiences like this with all of you. So that's why I'm here. So for our dumplings, all right, we are going to be doing a few different things. First, we're going to make the dough. We want to let the dough rest. Then we'll get the stuffing figured out, all right? We're going to make a broth for our dumplings to sit and cook, and then we will roll out our actual dumplings with the dough and then cook them, okay? So it's going to be a lot of fun. What I would like you to start out with is a mixing bowl. And whenever I'm making a dough, I always put down a cutting board because it makes cleanup a lot easier. So any spillage goes onto your cutting board instead of all over your counter. So if you have a big cutting board, put that down, put your bowl on top, all right? And then we're going to be measuring everything in this bowl to start. We also want to get some water nice and warm, okay? So if you have a tea kettle or a pot, something of that sort, we are going to just add just 3/4 cup of water, so just a little bit, so it'll only take a minute or so to preheat, all right? So 3/4 of a cup of water into a tea kettle or a pot, and we're going to bring it up to a boil, all right? And again, you just want about 3/4 to 1 full cup of water so that it goes quickly, all right? No more than that. We will actually be getting another pot ready with water in separately, but set for something different. So next, we're going to grab some sort of wide pan, okay? Something wide with some sides, all right? So in this, we're going to be adding about 4 cups of water, all right? And we're gonna set it on our stove and also get it warm. That way we have it ready for later, all right? So about 4 cups of water, which is about a quart, okay, of water. We're just gonna measure this out. This one doesn't have to be perfect. You just wanna fill it up maybe 3/4 of the way. All right, cool. Filling that up with water, and then we're just going to turn that on. We're gonna turn that burner on to high as well so that we can get it going. And that's going to come to a boil. Now, we're not going to use it right away, so when it comes to a boil, just cover it if you can, and then turn it off, and then that'll just kind of help speed us up with the process. But at least we have that going, okay? So, in this bowl, let's go ahead and measure out 1 cup plus 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, okay? All right, so now that we have our flour in this bowl, we're going to be adding some salt. Anytime you're working with flavor, with flour, you should be adding salt because it helps add flavor, okay? All-purpose flour is quite boring without salt. So let's go ahead and add 1/2 teaspoon of salt into our flour. All right. Perfect. And then we're going to take a whisk if you have one. If not, then a spoon will do. And we're just going to mix the salt and flour together. Now we have this flour. We have that water that boiled, the smaller one, and then it's been resting a little bit, okay, which is good because we want it just slightly less than a boil. All right, so we're going to be slowly adding this water into this mixture, but it's going to be really warm, so we don't want to burn our fingers, okay? So I want you to find a tool, all right? Traditionally, you would make this with chopsticks, and you would start to mix it up with chopsticks, okay? But if you don't have chopsticks, then just a fork or a small spoon will do, okay? We're going to start, and I want you to grab 2 so that you have one in each hand, and it's just going to make it kind of fun. And this is the traditional way to mix up a dumpling batter. All right, so my water, by the way, is just starting to boil, so I'm going to cover it up and turn it off for now. And then pull out these chopsticks. And so I'm just going to add a little bit of water, okay? Maybe a 1/4 cup or so. And then I'm going to start stirring it. And you know what? I also have an overhead camera I can turn on here for you guys. So if you have your view on gallery view, you can take a look at what I'm doing here. And then you can get a good feel for it, just in case you're not sure, all right? So here you can see I'm starting to mix up the water into the flour. Perfect. And as you start to do it, it's going to slowly absorb into itself, but you'll be able to see, okay, how watery is it? How dry is it? Do I need to add a little more water? So after you mix some in, you feel like you've really chopped up some of the chunks, we can add a little bit more water. All right, and you don't want to do too much water, so Little bits of a time at a time doesn't hurt. And then as we start to mix it in, it'll slowly get to the point where we can use our hands and it won't be too hot. But this just initially helps mix it all together while it's at the right temperature. And at this temperature is going to really be quite malleable. So it's going to make it a lot easier to work with, okay, having it at such a high heat. All right, it's going to work really well to activate the glutens and the proteins that are going to make a great dumpling dough. All right, so I have some bigger chunks forming here, okay? So I like that. I can see that it's starting to all kind of bind together. There are a few little chunks still in there, but for the most part, I'm starting to get some bigger chunks. So I'm just using my chopsticks to just kind of try to cool it down a little bit. And then I'm going to take the dough off the chopsticks and kind of feel it out. And if I think it's cold enough to touch, be careful. If I think it's cold enough to touch, I'm going to start to try to pull it all together. Now, be warned that it's going to get goopier as you press it all together, so don't put too much water, okay? Little bits at a time. Now is we're going to be kneading it, and yes, use a little bit, so hopefully you have a little bit extra flour. We're going to be kneading it with that flour to make it so that it's just slightly sticky to the touch, kind of like Scotch tape, okay? So little bits of flour on your cutting board is what you want to do next, and then we're going to be folding it in half and pressing it down, folding it in half and pressing it down to make it a little bit better consistency, okay? So we're pretty close to ready to rock at this point, okay? If you have your dough at a nice consistency, then you should be good. And it's going to rest, and all the cracks and bumps are going to end up relaxing, okay? So if you don't have it perfectly smooth, perfect, because it's not supposed to be perfectly smooth right now, all right? We just have a nice, consistently mixed dough with that's not too sticky and not too dry, kind of like Play-Doh, okay? Fun to work with. All right, so once you have it at that point, what I want you to do is I want you to form it into a ball, all right? Nice and tight, nice and cute. And then we're gonna roll it around in flour. So you wanna coat it in flour. Flour is like sunscreen on your skin. It's a protectant, all right? So it's gonna help keep all the moisture inside. And so we wanna make sure we've coated it with flour. So next up, we're going to put this in a nice comfy environment for it to sit and relax, okay? You have a few options. If you want to, you can use one of the bags that your goodies were sent in, all right? And just put it in there and seal it up. Or if not, then you can use a kitchen towel and get it wet under some really warm water, wring it out really well, and then wrap the ball in that slightly damp towel, okay? But hopefully you all have the bag, and I'm just going to close it up in this bag and let it relax. All right? And then I'm just going to put it to the side. All right, cool. So congratulations, you did the first part of making this dough. So easy, right? Next up, we are going to be creating our miso broth with that water that we got parboiled, okay? So if it boiled and then you turned it off, let's go ahead and turn it back on, all right? And should hopefully already be somewhat warm. We're just going to bring it back up to a boil. And what we're going to be doing in there, okay, is that we're going to be blanching the edamame. So we're just going to wake the edamame up a little bit. And then we're going to be adding in our miso bouillon so that we can turn it into a broth that we will later use for the dumplings. Okay, so those are going to be what we're doing. In addition, we're going to put all of our goodies, all of our flavor into a food processor or a blender of some sort to make a nice, delicious filling for the dumplings. So hopefully you all have something that can blend or process or chop up everything. So if you can pull that out, that would be great. I have my food processor here. So hopefully your water now is coming back to a boil or a simmer, all right? We're gonna grab our edamame, And we want about 1 cup, okay? So you can measure it out, but if it ends up being a little more or a little less, it's all good. You can use it all right? Or save some and snack on it. But ideally we want about 1 cup of edamame. So I'm just gonna measure mine here. And I'm using the same kit that you guys have. Okay, so mine's about a cup plus a tablespoon. So I'm just gonna use it all because why not? So we are going to be pouring our edamame into this water. All right, and we're just going to be cooking it for a minute or 2 just to kind of soften it and wake it up. And this is what's going to make it really soft and delicious in our filling. And this is the same kind of technique that you can use when you're making homemade hummus. So if you ever buy chickpeas at the store and you throw them in your food processor and blend them up, if you give them a little bit of time in some hot water and they just soften up a little extra, it's going to make your hummus that much softer, that much more lush, all right? So we're going to put it in there. Keep your heat on high, all right? And then in just a minute or so, minute or 2, we're going to pull it out. So you will have the option here. If you have a slotted spoon of some sort, okay, which means you have a bunch of holes in it, then you can pull the edamame out with the slotted spoon and just use this same water and we'll be adding the bouillon in there. All right, but if you don't have anything like this, you could strain the edamame and then just fill your pot back up and then with more water and bring it back to a boil. So with that, I'm starting to see some of my edamame float to the top of the pot, and that's what I'm looking for, all right? Once it floats to the top, it means that the water, the hot water is seeped through the edamame. And so I'm going to scrape anything off the top and I'm going to go ahead and just put it right into my food processor, okay? All right, so I have all of my edamame or peas pulled out of the water. I'm going to grab my miso bouillon, add it into the water, let it boil for just a minute or so, and then I'm going to turn it off, okay? And let it sit. All right, perfect. And that's going to add a lot of flavor to our water, which is going to, in turn, really help with our broth later on. So hopefully you've got that bouillon in there. It's almost all dissolved into the water, okay? If it's close, perfect. You can go ahead and just turn off the water. Next up, we're going to go ahead and add a bunch of other goodies back to this food processor. All right, let's go ahead and add, let's grab our garlic, all right? I'm going to pull out our garlic cloves, and we're just going to plop those in there. So simple, so easy. Next up, once you put your garlic in there, so we're going to grab a knife, and we want to just carefully pull off the skin of the ginger. And there are a few ways you can do this. I like to do it with my knife because I think it's nice to have the control of my knife. If you wanted to, you could use a peeler. You can technically also use a spoon and scrape off the skin. Personally, I don't really like that technique, but I find it annoying, but a lot of people really like it. So whatever you want. If you're using a knife though, I want you to think about your knife skills, all right? So pinch your blade, pointer finger and thumb, all right, on the blade, and then wrap your other fingers around the handle. That's something you want to think about when you're cutting, all right? Pinching the blade, that's how a professional chef holds their blade, so that you can really get right on top of whatever you're cutting and have the most control, all right? So I'm just going around the edges and just carefully pulling off. And we're going to be using, let's just throw in, ideally about 1/2 inch, okay, so you can judge your ginger. But to be honest, again, I love a potent ginger pop, so mine's a little bit more than 1/2 inch, but I'm just going to toss it in. Next up, we are going to be adding in, let's add some scallions, all right? So let's grab our scallions or green onions. And if there are any wilting, outside pieces, just pull those off, compost them. All right, mine have a few wilting pieces today. Perfect. And we're actually going to chop some of this because we want to use some of it for the garnish later on, okay? So we're just going to give it some love right now. We're going to pull off any outside pieces that aren't so pretty. We're going to take a knife and we're going to slice some of the tops off and save them for a garnish for later. And then we're also going to chop off the very bottom of it, that's where the root is, so that we can compost that, all right? So I'm going to go ahead, I'm actually going to just chop off the root first. By the way, if you want, you can, so this, you've got this bottom, right, that's got the root on it. If you chop off like 1/2 inch of that bottom, you can take this bottom and put it in a little bowl with a little bit of water and put it on your windowsill in your kitchen, and it will grow into new green onions. It's super fun. And then I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to just do a rough chop of the very tops of the scallions, nice and thin, so that I get some garnish, all right? And maybe just like a couple tablespoons of garnish. And I'm just going to put those to the side. And the rest, I'm just going to chuck them right here into the food processor. Finally, I want to add some parsley to this as well, okay? So just to add a little bit extra flavor, a little bit extra green. The parsley is also going to make a really great garnish. But go ahead and grab your parsley. And let's chop some right now to make a garnish. So I'm going to take my knife, and I have my parsley just laid out on my cutting board, okay? And I'm going to take my knife and just go through and do some rough chop of the top so that I get a couple tablespoons for garnish, okay? And hopefully you can see in my overhead camera what I have going on here, but they're nice, big, pretty pieces. So next up, we're just going to add a little bit of liquid to this food processor, okay? So I want you to take maybe like a 1/4 cup measurement, and we're going to scoop it out from the miso broth and throw it in here, okay? So I'm going to bring this over here, uncover my miso broth, take a big scoop, and I want to add maybe a 1/4 cup to start, all right? We may end up adding more. Everything is fluid in the kitchen, okay? So your recipe is your guide. If it says something different, ignore it. All right. And then also, I'd love actually to add a little bit of the tamari into this, okay? So if you want to add just like a tablespoon or so, I just added about 1/2 of my container, okay? So that was actually a couple tablespoons. But that's going to add an extra flavor pop. And then finally, your tamari already has salt in it, but let's just add a pinch of salt because different salts have different flavors, okay? So we want to get a layer of a good quality salt in there. And with that, we're going to blend it up. We're going to process it up, all right? If you need to add more water, you can add just regular water from the sink, or you can add an extra splash from your broth, okay? So if you need to loosen it up a little bit more, you can, but we want it to be pretty thick. All right, so if you've blended it up, I'd love for you to taste it, okay? So get a spoon, give it a taste, and think about how you like it, and think about salt level. How is the salt level? All right, how is the ginger level? Does it have a nice bite to it? All right, think about, we want it, like I said, we want it to be like creamy, smooth mashed potatoes. So that's kind of the consistency you're looking for. I'm gonna give mine another go here with the blender. All right, so we are now gonna make those dumplings and get them boiling, all right? Woohoo, we're almost there. Congratulations. So just keep this nearby, all right, so that we can use it later. And then I want you to just kind of get yourself organized here on your cutting board. I'm going to take some of my garnishes and just move them over to the side. But if you want, you could put them on a plate or a bowl just to really get them out of the way so that you have a nice big clean cutting board to work with. So what we're going to be doing next is we're going to be grabbing hopefully you have a teeny bit of extra flour, okay? Hopefully you didn't use it all right? We're gonna shake just a little bit of flour onto our cutting board and spread it around just a little bit. All right, looks like some of you are still cleaning up, so I will pause for a second. And you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna grab, we're all going to need a rolling pin of some sort, okay? I'm gonna teach this just like a regular rolling pin because not many people have the little dumpling rolling pins that are really small. And even to make this more user-friendly, I'm gonna do it with a wine bottle. And I want you to find something that can be a landing place for your dough and your dumplings. So I'm gonna grab a big plate, okay, a big wide plate. And I want you to grab something like that. And keep that nearby. And we're also going to need a towel, a kitchen towel, that we can keep on top of our dumplings to keep them moist, okay? And on top of our dough. So we can pull this out here. And hopefully you've put some flour down on your cutting board, okay? We can put our dough down. As you'll see, it's a very different consistency now. It's relaxed. It's a lot smoother, all right? It's really pretty. And we're gonna take a knife and slice this into 4 pieces, all right? So as even as you can, slice it into quarters. Great. And then we're going to just roll each quarter around in the dough and roll it into a ball. And then you're gonna put it on the plate and cover it with a towel, okay? So each one, roll it around in the flour, roll it into a ball so that it rests in the shape of a ball, and then put it under the towel. Go ahead and grab your first of the balls, okay? Make sure you have a little bit of flour down on your cutting board so they don't stick to the cutting board. Grab your rolling pin, whatever it might be. Make sure it's nice and dry. All right, and what we're going to do is we're going to be rolling this out, all right? And as it starts to get thinner, we're going to roll the edges and rotate it as we roll the edges so that the edges are the thinnest part, okay? It should be about half as wide at the edge than it is in the middle. So I'm gonna go ahead, roll it a little bit, turn it, roll it out a little bit, turn it. If it's getting stuck, I'm just gonna add a little bit more flour, roll it out, turn it. All right, and I'm trying to make it as round as I can. And then once it gets thin, all right, maybe like a tortilla thin, then I'm going to take it and I'm going to start in the middle and press out. And then I'm going to rotate. Start in the middle, press it out. Start in the middle, press it out. All right, we're trying to make the edges thinner than the middle. All right, and if it's not a perfect circle, that's okay, but do your best. Try to make it as circular as possible. And you can see mine is not perfect. And there we go. I have some thin edges, thicker middle. I want to make sure it's not too sticky on the bottom, okay? So just making sure I've got flour down. Perfect. All right, hopefully everyone's with me here and you can see it in my overhead camera if you have it on. So you can see it's not perfect circle, okay? And then, great. And then what I want you to do also is we're gonna grab just a little bowl and put some water in it so that if we need to get our fingers a little bit wet, we can, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. Just a little bit. But you don't want your fingers wet right now. So what we're gonna do next is we're gonna take a scoop of that filling, and you guys are gonna end up having extra filling, okay? I'm just warning you now. And now we get to fold it however we want, okay? So there are a few different folding techniques I can show you. So for this first one, I'm gonna make it pretty simple, all right? And this is one of my favorites, to be honest. I think it's really pretty. I'm going to take the two edges, and again, if you want to put it on gallery view so you can see from above, I'm going to take the two edges, pull them in, and pinch them nice and tight. If for some reason your dough isn't sticking together when you pinch it, that's when you can get a little bit of water on your finger and just run it on the insides. But it should stay together. And then we're going to take these two outsides on the other side and pull them in and try to make them evenly match in the middle. All right, so I'm going to pinch the whole middle together to make it a nice little point in the middle. And then I'm going to take these edges and just flatten them out along the sides. So I want you guys to really think about, okay, pulling it, and we'll do this one again with our next dumpling, okay? You pull in two sides and you pinch them in the middle, and then you pull in the other two sides and you really make a tight pinch in the middle, okay? And then you take these outside pieces and you pinch them along the edges so that they have this fun star shape. All right, so I'm rolling out my second dumpling here. I've got it nice and flat, and I'm going to go ahead and make those edges thinner. So I'm going from the middle, out, rotate, middle, out, rotate, middle, out, rotate. All right. And the reason we do that is because when we're pinching the edges together, they end up doubling. So we want them to be thinner so that the consistency overall is pretty even. All right, so there you go. Now I'm going to take my scoop, and you guys are going to have extra filling once again, so I hope you're okay with that, but it makes a great like Asian style pasta. You know, you can mix it in. You can do a lot of fun things with it. All right, so when you're ready, I want you to look up at me and smile so I can fold this one again for you. And it's going to be, I'm going to do the same fold as last time. So I'm going to take two edges, I'm going to fold them in, try to make them match and pinch. All right, so hopefully you can see that. Then I'm going to take these other two edges and I'm going to fold it in. I'm trying to get it in the middle here. Fold it in and pinch it, so I'm pressing it together in the middle. Okay, so now I've got this nice little pinch in the middle. Then I'm going to pull these sides. Some of them I have to pull out, okay, from being tucked under. And I'm going to take these sides of the edges and go right down the side. So this one I had to pull it out, and I'm going to go right down the side. Then I'm going to turn. I'm going to go in here, I'm going to pull some of these edges out because they got folded under. And then I'm going to go right down the side and pinch it together. And you guys will be surprised, as soon as this hits water, it's going to get way stronger, okay? It's going to really strengthen the dough, so it's going to change the consistency. All right, so we're just going to keep practicing this shape with the other ones. It's going to make a really great Instagram photo, all right, once you get the hang of it. So I'm just going to keep going. And meanwhile, now that we're about halfway done, I want you to once again, so take a pause actually. Once you're finished with the second one, all right, I want you to go ahead and turn back on your water, all right, and bring it to a simmer. So we want it on like a medium-high heat. And once I see that you guys are doing that, I'm going to tell you the next step with your water because I want to make sure that the water is ready to go. So we're going to turn that on to medium-high heat, uncover it, and we're going to add in our tamari, okay? The rest of the tamari, I want you to just pour it in there so that we can boost that flavor even more. And then later on we're going to add the truffle oil, but we'll hang tight for that. And I'm just going to cover it back up and let it come to a simmer as I roll out these last two dumplings. All right, so I hope you all did that. Now I'm going to go back here, roll this out, and keep practicing that fold, and I hope by the end you nail it. I'm going to take two sides. I'm going to try to make this as great of an angle as possible. Take two sides, bring them in the middle, and just pinch. All right, next up, I'm going to take, and I'm going to try to fold all these sides out so that they're easy to work with next time, okay? So I'm pulling these pieces out a little bit. Then I'm going to take the other two sides, pull them in, and in the middle, give it a pinch. Then I have all these floppy sides here. I'm going to pull them in together and just pinch them together. All right, you guys, I'm going to do my last demonstration here. So if you want to watch one more time, now's your chance. Overhead camera. All right, here we go. Taking the two edges, all right, bringing them in, pinching them together in the middle, turning it, pulling these sides up so that they're out of the way. All right, hopefully you saw that. Then I'm bringing these edges here, pulling them in, trying to make them match as much as I can, and pinching the middle, so pressing in the middle. So now I have two good presses in the middle there. And then I'm going to take these edges here and press them down to make a nice little star. Okay, you guys, with that, we're going to get these cooking so you can enjoy them. So my water is now simmering. I'm going to uncover it, all right? If it's looking really thin, you're going to want to add a little bit more water and just make sure you bring it back to a simmer, okay? And I'm going to take either a spatula or something, maybe your slotted spoon, something like that, and I'm going to pick up each dumpling and I'm going to carefully lie it into the water, okay? And there should be enough water to go about halfway up your dumpling. So I'm carefully laying these into the water, and it should be on a medium heat at a light simmer, so small bubbles. All right, and I'm just carefully dropping each of these dumplings into the water. As soon as I've dropped them into the water, I want to just wiggle them around really carefully with my spoon to make sure that they're not getting stuck on the bottom of the pan. Because as they cook, they'll let go. But if you let them just sit there in the water, then they're going to get stuck and they're going to end up breaking. Okay? So very, very carefully, just moving them around, making sure they're not getting stuck while they're cooking on the bottom. So once you have them in there, again, you want a nice light bubble. And I'm going to take this truffle oil and drizzle about half of it on top. And then I'm going to save half of it for the very end. And then I'm actually going to cover this back up most of the way. I'm leaving a little crack so that it can steam. You put your dumplings in there carefully at a rolling simmer, so nice little bubbles. And as soon as you've put them all in there, you're going to carefully wiggle them to make sure that they're not sticking to the bottom, okay? Make sure that they're loose. And then you're going to add half the truffle oil and then cover it almost all the way. Cayenne is potent though, so beware, don't add too much. A little goes a long way, all right? So we can add a little shake of cayenne into that broth just to give it some extra pizzazz. All right, and it smells really good. And I'm just going to take a look at mine now. So then I want you to grab whatever plate you're going to be serving them on, because we're going to be putting our dumplings on the plate. We're going to be covering it with these beautiful garnishes. We're going to add some sesame seeds on top, all right, and a little bit of extra broth, and then a little bit of extra truffle oil. So I'm checking on my dumplings here. They should be really firm and strong. So if the top of it is still kind of seeming really soft and you can make a divot in it with your spatula, then it's not quite there. Okay, it's close, but it's not quite. Mine are really close, and you'll know because they'll feel pretty firm and pretty sturdy. So I'm just going to cover mine for another 30 seconds or so, and then they're going to be ready to go. All right? And then we're going to take a group picture with our dumplings. So hopefully in a minute or two, you're going to have something to show and then I'm going to let you go enjoy them, okay? And sorry, we're a few minutes past the time, so I hope this doesn't mess any of you up. I'm going to go ahead and pull mine out now. And now I've partnered with another company. So we did have a 6-month time where we were only offering shopping gift cards. So yeah, now this company we've partnered with, and they are amazing. They're located in Oakland, and they just put so much love in their kits. And so we recently developed these specifically for you guys. And that's why the flour, I think they didn't realize they needed to add a little more, but I'm going to be communicating that very strongly after this. But yeah, so this was something special for you. So anyway, with that, you have amazing dumplings stuffed with a brilliant edamame interior and an umami-centric top, all right? I love the word umami with this recipe because there's so many elements of umami. You have fermented soy sauce, you have the truffle oil, you have just so many good things. Also, I love We Crush events, so thank you guys so much for working with us over the years. It's really been a joy, and you guys are always our priority. So anytime I see a booking come in from you, we do whatever it takes to make it happen. So really, really appreciate your partnership. It means so much to us.